I spent $3,000 on my sister's baby shower. Her friend joked about my miscarriage, and no one defended me. I paid $3,000 to organize a baby shower I wasn't emotionally ready to attend. 6 weeks earlier, I lost my first pregnancy. No baby, no heartbeat, no funeral. Just silence, a hospital wristband, and a body that didn't feel like mine anymore. My family barely spoke about it. A few awkward "so sorry" texts. My mom told me I could try again soon, and then Caroline asked if I could help plan hers. My sister, younger by 4 years, due in August, glowing, radiant, surrounded by congratulations. I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. But I was still bleeding emotionally when she sent me Pinterest boards and cake ideas. I said yes. Not because I was okay, but because I thought it might help. If I could build something beautiful for her, maybe I could convince myself I was healing. I covered everything. Full catering, themed desserts, custom balloon arch, linen rentals, floral centerpieces. I booked a garden venue, built a color scheme, and dealt with every vendor personally. Caroline didn't lift a finger. She smiled through the whole thing like it was expected. My inbox was full of RSVPs. People couldn't stop saying how lucky she was to have me. They didn't know I cried in my car after every planning call. She asked for pastel pinks and not too many games. I delivered. She asked for a lemon coconut cake with gold foil accents. I ordered it from the best bakery in the city. I told her she'd get the shower of her dreams, and she did. I kept telling myself this was about her. Not me. Not my loss. Not the child I would never meet. It was about being a good sister. The strong one. The capable one. Then came Madison, Caroline's old college friend. Blonde, loud, and casually cruel. I'd met her once or twice before. Never liked her. She showed up late, already drinking, in a romper that belonged in a nightclub, not a garden. She didn't say hello, just asked where the alcohol was, rolled her eyes at the decorations, and made a comment about how over-the-top everything looked. I smiled and walked away. Because the day wasn't about me. At least, that's what I kept repeating. The morning of the shower, I arrived early to set up. The venue opened at 10 a.m., and by 9:45, I was already hauling floral boxes and dessert trays out of the trunk of my car. I had barely slept the night before, not from stress, but from the weight of pretending I was excited. The weather was perfect. Sunlight filtered through the tall garden windows, catching on the glass vases and ribboned gift bags like something out of a commercial. The room looked flawless, clean, curated, expensive. Caroline arrived at 11, just in time for her hair to still look freshly curled and her dress to remain unwrinkled. She smiled like a woman who had walked into her dream. She didn't say thank you. She looked around and said it was cute, then asked why the seating wasn't arranged exactly how she had pictured it. I told her we adjusted to fit the tables the venue had available. She waved it off, said it was fine, the tone she used when something wasn't really fine, but she didn't want to argue. Her husband showed up just long enough to drop off diaper boxes and pose for 3 photos before leaving. She told everyone he was super busy with work. I knew he just didn't want to be there. As the guests arrived, I kept to the side. I didn't want to be the center of anything. I just wanted to get through the day. Everyone seemed happy. The food was a hit. People loved the lemonade bar and the personalized favors. But somewhere between the mini quiches and the guess the baby food game, I realized something that stung more than I expected. No one had asked me how I was doing. Not once. Not my mother, who had hugged Caroline tightly and called her glowing. Not our cousin Aaron, who had dropped off a sympathy card for me weeks earlier but now didn't even make eye contact. Not even Caroline herself. It was as if the loss had been erased, as if my body hadn't failed in silence, as if I was just the party planner, not the sister who had nearly become a mother herself. Then Madison's voice cut through the chatter. She laughed, loud and off-key, and made a comment about how this baby better be real, or we're going to have to do this all over again. People laughed. Caroline laughed, and I froze. It wasn't the first time Madison had said something off, but this one landed differently. Because everyone knew. Everyone in that room knew what had happened to me. No one said a word. I told myself I was imagining it. That maybe I was being too sensitive, taking things the wrong way. That Madison probably didn't even remember what had happened to me. That maybe she was just making noise to fill the space, like she always did. Except I knew better. She was there that Christmas, when Caroline made her pregnancy announcement. She saw the way I got up from the table, holding my breath, trying not to let anyone see my hands shake. She was there when my aunt whispered to my mother, poor timing, and when I left early without saying goodbye. So no, she remembered. That comment at the shower wasn't careless, it was deliberate. She watched me after she said it, waiting for a reaction. And when she didn't get one, she smiled to herself and turned back to the group like nothing had happened. I needed a moment. I slipped away from the crowd, headed toward the far end of the garden path, where the flowering hedges gave me just enough space to breathe without being seen. I didn't cry. I just stood there, listening to the sounds of the party behind me. Laughter, plates clinking, someone clapping at a game I didn't want to be part of. When I returned, everything had shifted. Caroline was now seated beneath the main canopy, surrounded by pastel gift bags and half-eaten cupcakes, opening presents while someone read the cards aloud. A photographer circled the setup, capturing her candid joy. Guests gathered in loose clusters nearby, sipping mimosas, snapping pictures for Instagram. I stayed off to the side, near the catering station under the trees. I picked up a plastic cup of warm lemonade and held it with both hands just to keep them occupied. That's when Madison struck again. She asked, loudly, if Caroline had double-checked the due date this time, because we all remember what happened last time someone got excited too early. No one laughed this time, but no one said anything either. Not my mother, not Caroline, not anyone. There was a beat, just long enough for the silence to sting, and then someone passed Caroline another gift. The moment dissolved like sugar in tea, but I didn't move. I was frozen in place, watching them all carry on like nothing had happened. Like that line hadn't just landed in the middle of the party like broken glass on marble. Caroline looked at me once, briefly. She didn't seem surprised or angry, just irritated, like my presence was the inconvenience, not the insult. And that's when I knew she wasn't going to defend me. No one was. So I put the cup down, walked quietly toward the hedge where I'd left my bag, picked it up, and kept walking, past the archway, past the rental chairs, past the people I had paid to entertain. No scene, no words, just my exit and their silence. I sat in the car for almost 10 minutes before starting the engine, and the air was warm, too still. I cracked the window and stared ahead at the gravel path winding out of the garden parking lot, heart pounding like I'd just run a race. I hadn't planned on walking out. I hadn't thought about what would happen after. But when I left, no one followed. No one called out. No one cared. I drove in silence. No music. Just the sound of tires on pavement and the blood in my ears. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I felt numb, not sad, not angry, just hollow. My husband, Mark, opened the door before I even turned the key. He must have seen me through the front window. He stepped outside slowly, his face tense like he already knew something had happened. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just said I looked pale and asked if I needed water. I nodded, and we went inside. I sat at the kitchen counter while he poured a glass and placed it gently in front of me. I didn't speak at first. I just took a slow sip, then another until my hands stopped shaking. Then I told him everything. Every word Madison had said, every expression on Caroline's face, the silence in the garden, the weight of it all pressing down on me until I had to leave just to breathe. Mark didn't interrupt. He stood with his hands on the counter, listening the way he always did, patiently, fully, like my words mattered. When I finished, he said that I had done more for Caroline than anyone else would have, that he had watched me spend nights organizing vendor lists and color palettes while I was still quietly bleeding, that I had given more than they deserved and I didn't owe them anything more. He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised either. He said he'd noticed how quiet my family had been since the miscarriage, how little they reached out, how fast they moved on. And then he asked the question I hadn't let myself think. Did I want to cut them off? I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, staring at the glass of water, feeling the weight of the past 2 months crash into me like a wave I'd been holding back with both hands. He didn't push. He just told me that whatever I decided, he was with me. That if I wanted to talk to Caroline, we'd talk. And if I wanted to walk away for good, we'd both walk together. I felt something shift then. Not anger, not even relief, just clarity. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't carrying this alone. The messages started the next morning. The first was from Caroline. She asked if I was okay, said she hadn't noticed me leave, claimed she thought I was in the restroom or maybe outside making a call. Then she added that she was a little hurt I'd left without saying anything, especially after everything she'd been through. I didn't respond. An hour later, my mom sent a message asking what happened. She said people were confused, that Caroline was devastated, that Madison had only been joking and it wasn't worth blowing out of proportion. I read that one twice. Then came a group chat ping, one I'd been silently part of for years. Cousins, aunts, Caroline, my mom. Someone sent a photo from the party. Caroline smiling, hand on her bump, surrounded by pink wrapping paper and people I no longer trusted. No one asked where I was. No one mentioned Madison's comment. But the texts kept coming. My aunt wrote that Caroline was in tears. My cousin chimed in to say family should stick together, especially during big milestones. Someone else said they understood I was still healing, but maybe I should have taken a little time alone instead of leaving. That's when I finally answered. Not in the group chat, privately. I messaged Caroline and told her everything. I told her that Madison's words weren't a joke, that they cut like glass in front of dozens of people who said nothing, that I stood there bleeding in silence while no one even flinched. I told her that silence was worse than the words, and I told her that she, of all people, should have said something, anything, to shut it down. She replied quickly, said she didn't want to make a scene, that she was trying to keep the daylight, that if I had a problem with Madison, I should have said something to her privately. I stared at the screen for a long time. Mark walked into the kitchen and saw my face. He asked if I wanted him to read it. I passed him the phone. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he asked me what I wanted to do. I told him I was tired of being the one who absorbs, who smooths, who takes hits in the name of family. I told him I felt erased, first by the miscarriage, now by the people who should have protected me. He nodded. Then he helped me draft a final message. We told Caroline we'd be stepping back, that we wouldn't be attending any more events for the foreseeable future, that while we wished her and the baby well, we couldn't pretend things were okay. We sent a separate message to my mom too, a firm one. I expected backlash. It came within hours. Phone calls I didn't answer, voicemails saying I was breaking the family apart, that Caroline needed support during pregnancy, that this wasn't the time for drama. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like the fragile one. I felt like someone finally drawing a line in the sand and standing on the right side of it. The silence came quickly. No more calls, no new texts, no group messages with updates on Caroline's nursery colors or baby name debates. It all just stopped. And for a few days, it felt like peace. Mark and I didn't talk much about it that first week. We didn't need to. He could see it in the way I moved through the house, slower, more careful, like I was trying not to wake something fragile inside me. We had quiet breakfasts, walked the dog more often, cooked dinner instead of ordering takeout. On paper, everything was fine, normal even. But grief has a way of sneaking back in when the noise disappears. One night, about a week after we sent the messages, I opened a kitchen drawer to grab scissors and found the original guest list for the shower. My handwriting, Caroline's notes in the margins, a little heart doodle next to Madison's name. It felt like a punch. I stood there holding that paper, frozen as the memory of the day poured over me like dirty water. The laughter, the smirks, the absence of anyone stepping in. I hadn't realized how much I'd buried in order to keep functioning. Mark walked in and stopped mid-step when he saw my face. He didn't ask questions, just reached over, took the list from my hand, folded it once, and dropped it into the trash. He said I didn't owe anyone anything. Not explanations, not silence, not guilt. And he was right. But that didn't stop the ache. Because the thing about walking away from family, even when it's justified, is that it still feels like amputation. You're cutting something out and the wound doesn't care that it was toxic. It still bleeds. I tried to distract myself. I went back to work. Took on extra projects. Said yes to a friend's dinner invite even though I didn't feel up to it. Everyone was kind, but I could feel their hesitation. Like they didn't want to say the wrong thing, didn't know how to ask if I was still grieving. Yes, and not just the baby. Not just the future I had already started building in my head. I was grieving the version of my family I thought I had. The mother I thought would protect me. The sister I thought would never tolerate cruelty in her presence. I scrolled through old photos more than I should have. Caroline and me at the lake, a birthday cake from our teens with both our names on it, family holidays. I kept waiting to feel angry enough to delete them all, but I didn't. I just felt tired. Mark noticed the weight I was carrying and tried to ease it in small ways. He brought home flowers, made my coffee just the way I liked it, left a new journal on the kitchen counter with a note that said, "In case you need somewhere to put the pieces." I cried when I read that, not because of the journal, but because I finally allowed myself to feel the loss without needing to justify it. I was starting to understand something I hadn't before. Family doesn't break all at once, it erodes. With every joke left unchallenged, with every moment someone chooses comfort over courage, with every silence that says, "It's not worth it." So when people started asking, quietly, cautiously, why we hadn't been around, I didn't explain. I didn't retell the story. I didn't defend my choices. I just said we needed space. Because the truth? Sometimes space is the only thing that keeps you sane. I thought it was over. The silence from my family settled in like fog, heavy but predictable. I had made peace with it, or so I thought. I wasn't checking my phone constantly anymore. I wasn't reading old messages. The notifications had gone quiet, and with each passing week, it felt more like a closed chapter. Until Caroline's due date approached. It started with a text from my mother. She said Caroline had asked about me, that she was nervous and emotional and hoping for a peaceful birth, that she wanted to put everything behind us. My mom said it would mean a lot if I reached out, that it might help Caroline feel safe and supported. No mention of what had happened, no apology, no acknowledgement of Madison, no responsibility for how they'd left me bleeding in silence, then blamed me for walking away. Just a request to perform again, to be the accommodating sister, the healer, the bridge. I didn't respond. A few days later, Caroline texted. She said she hoped I was okay, that she missed me, that she didn't want her daughter to grow up without knowing her aunt. That line hit harder than I expected, because I knew exactly what it was. A soft threat wrapped in sentiment, a reminder that I would be the one depriving the baby of something. Not her. Not the people who stood by and let me be humiliated. Not the friend who used my trauma as a punchline. Not the mother who told me to be the bigger person. Me. Mark read the message over my shoulder. He didn't say anything at first, just placed his hand gently on my back, grounding me. Then he asked what I wanted to do. I said I didn't know. Because part of me, the part that still longed for the version of Caroline I used to believe in, wanted to forgive, to step back into the role I'd always played, to show up with flowers and hold the baby and pretend none of it ever happened. But the rest of me, the part that remembered sitting alone in my car after the baby shower, shaking with shame while my sister smiled for photos, knew better. So I sat with it. For 2 days, I let the message hang in my inbox, unread again and again. Every time I saw the preview line, "I miss you," it felt like a splinter under my skin. And then I wrote back. I told her I wasn't angry anymore, that I genuinely wished her a safe and peaceful delivery, that I hoped her daughter brought her joy and softness and clarity. But I also told her I wasn't ready. The pain doesn't disappear just because someone else is finally ready to forget it. That an apology without ownership isn't healing. It's convenience. And that love, even between sisters, can't grow where accountability is unwelcome. I hit send. She didn't reply. And that was the final answer I needed. In the weeks that followed, I stopped checking for updates. I muted the group chats. I unfollowed a few cousins. I didn't block anyone, not because I was holding space, but because I no longer needed protection. I wasn't expecting anything from them. That version of me, the one who waited to be seen, to be included, to be chosen, was gone. Mark and I talked about everything more openly after that. About grief, about family, about the future. For the first time in months, I felt like my life was mine again, not a stage for someone else's comfort. We started planning a trip, just a small one. A cabin by the lake we used to visit before everything fell apart. Somewhere quiet, somewhere new. I bought a new journal, started writing again. Not about loss, about space. About how healing sometimes looks like silence. And how strength sometimes looks like walking away without burning the bridge, just choosing never to cross it again. If you've ever been through something like this, if someone has humiliated you in front of people you thought were your allies, and then made you feel guilty for leaving, I want you to hear this. You're not cruel for protecting your peace. You're not selfish for refusing to perform forgiveness. And you're not broken for walking away from people who refuse to hold space for your pain. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is disappear quietly and build a better life where you're no longer begging for a seat at the table.